Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this special Easter premiere video where we're going to be talking about this particular painting you see on screen now called Christ Crowned with Thorns. It is a piece made by Veronese, also known as Paolo Cagliari, who was born in Verona 1528 and passed away in Venice 1588. It was made about 1584 to 1585. It is an oil on canvas and it measures 75.5 centimeters by 57.3. It is purchased through two campaigns, the museum campaigns of 1988 to 1993 and the other being 1998 to 2002 funds. It is a gift in memory of Dr. Elisa Lipecke Cernik and her husband, Dr. Stanislas Cernik, and is part of the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts Volunteer Association Fund and the Horsley and Townsend Bequest. The inventory number is 2010.23. Veronese was one of the triumvirate of competing yet mutually influencing transcendently great artist who dominated painting in Venice in the second half of the 16th century, the other being Titian and Tintoretto. Titian defined the comprehensive terms of the Venetian variant of High Renaissance, with its rich colorism, grand and idealized forms emerging within a palpable atmosphere. Veronese, born and of a generation and a half later than the great master, appreciated the appeal of the tactile sumptuousness of rich surfaces and the visual stimulation of the juxtaposition of colors. In this late work, his previously resplendent colors became increasingly denser and darker, and a new emotional resonance, even poignance, enters his work as his painting executed in the last years of his life. In the 1580s, Veronese executed some of his most moving and personal compositions, often simplified to single figures featuring a dark introspective tonalism. In the period of the Counter-Reformation, immediately following the Council of Trent, a tense and political climate existed in Venice, resulting from a series of serious defeats from the battles with the Ottoman Turks. Venice, already a city of profound religious faith and many public religious activities, became more and more intensely pious. This piety was enhanced by a series of plagues, including a particularly virulent one in 1576. In this ambience that Christ is crowned with thorns was created. Easter in the Roman Catholic faith is an important religious holiday, including Lent, a 46-day period of fasting and penance. Easter is considered as a vigil for the resurrection of Christ after his crucifixion. It can be understood that Lent represents the crucifixion itself. Then there's the Holy Week, which is the transitional period, followed by Christ's resurrection, i.e., Easter. A lot of the modern Easter rituals were created in the 4th century. Separated into 4 parts, Easter is composed of the celebration of Paschal candle, light being brought into darkness, the service of lessons, i.e., prophecies, and the administration of sacraments of baptism and confirmation to adult converts, and finally, Easter Mass itself. Easter is a 7-week solemn holiday during which Catholics around the world recognize Jesus as their Savior due to his sacrifice for their sins. As mentioned earlier, it begins with Lent, during which Catholics fast and repent for 46 days, starting the first Sunday after the vernal equinox, usually in March. Ash Wednesday marks formally the beginning of Lent, during which participants have an ash cross marked on their foreheads, meant to symbolize the sacrifice of Jesus. Palm Sunday marks the end of Lent and the beginning of the Holy Week. This is when Jesus arrived in Jerusalem for his last days on earth. Many parishioners are given blessed palms for personal devotions. These are either kept for a year or handed back to the church to be transformed into ash for the next Ash Wednesday of the following year. Holy Thursday follows. This commemorates Jesus' Last Supper, during which many important events occurred. For Catholics, this is when the priesthood is established and Judas' betrayal occurs that night. Good Friday commemorates Jesus' crucifixion. Many Catholics choose to abstain from eating during this day. Holy Saturday night, or Easter Vigil, marks the end of Easter, as it is to recognize Jesus' resurrection. Many Catholics will use this moment for their confirmation, while new Catholics may choose to be baptized at this moment. Here we have a close-up of the painting, and again it is made by Paolo Ciliari, who was born in Verona 1528 and passed away in Venice 1588. He is known for his history paintings depicting religious and mythological moments, such as the wedding at Cana, made in 1563, and the feast in the house of Levi, made in 1573. It is assumed that he is the fifth child of Gabriele, a stonecutter, and Caterina. He later took on the name of Paolo Ciliari because his mother was the illegitimate child of a nobleman, Antonio Ciliari. This uncertainty in his name and familial relations can also be seen in how he signed his name. He used P. Ciliari F., Paolo Verones, and Paolo Ciliari at different moments. Both Antonio Badil and Giovanni Francesco Carotto taught him how to paint in Verona. He later did works for important churches like the Church of San Francisco della Vigna and families such as the Giustiania family. His pieces included ceiling and wall paintings, as well as altarpieces and sketches. So, what I enjoy about this particular painting, although I'm not a very religious person myself, it does show the length and dedication that many people have to their faith. Obviously, Catholics are not the only ones to depict scenes from their religious books in paintings or wall art or anything else. But it's always very different with Catholics, obviously. The tradition is pretty unique and pretty different from all the other Christian faiths. But it's always interesting to me, especially since for a long time, many Christians couldn't even read the Bible, let alone have these scenes of the Bibles eh, presented to them in a visual matter. They kind of had to just think of it on their own, right? It had to be something that their imagination led them to this discovery, right? While as with paintings, and that's why I do like Catholic churches so much. There's so many that have these very decorative pieces in them, where you can visually see the stories that are spoken about in the Bible, right? And for many Catholics, that's how they understood the Bible, through the picture, since they couldn't read it, for two major reasons. One is most Bibles for a very long time were in Latin, which is a language that for most Christians only the priests and the cardinals, etc., the holy men, and eventually the holy women would be able to speak and read, but also because the average person didn't know how to read. Literally, most people were illiterate. So you either had to be a person of the church or a wealthy individual to be able to read, let alone read the Bible. So for many, these paintings, the murals, the glass stains, etc., in the churches were how they knew and understood the Bible, how Bible stories were shared amongst each other, how they were lived, right? And I think that's part of why these days comic books are such important pieces of culture. Because for a lot of us, when we read a book like The Hunger Games, I remember staying up a couple of nights, sleeplessly reading through this book. But for a lot of us, that's a lot to read. But when you have the movie, it's much more visual. It's much more, you're seeing the action. So with comic books, you get the both world, the best of both worlds, I should say, where you're getting some of the reading, right there. You still have to read a little bit, right? It's not completely just pictures, but you're also getting that visual. So when the author wants to show that the character is crying or has a particular look, all right, they don't have to use their words. They can just show that the character is looking off into the distance, and consequently kind of frees up the dialogue and the descriptions, etc., and really allow the author to get to the point, right? You don't have to, oh, this particular character was wearing this kind of shirt or that kind of shirt, or they were this skin color, or there were this uh, gender identity, or whatever the case might be. If the author really wants to show that, hey, the character is this ethnicity, they just drew it. They are attracted to this person, they just drew it, right? You didn't have to describe it. It wasn't something that you could contest, right? But it also is something that, hey, if one day you decided, hey, let's change it up, you can change it up as well. It really doesn't have to be so fixated on it has to be this or else, right? So it's always interesting to see that, that's how for a lot of Christians, uh, that's how they shared their Bible, their religious experience was through these paintings. Right now, obviously, these days, most of us are able to read. The Bible's now in multiple languages, right? So even if you don't read Latin or you don't know how to read at all, you're gonna have access to the Bible. There's now, of course, versions where it's an audio book, right? So somebody's reading it out loud, and you can just sit there and listen. So I think religious paintings aren't necessarily as important as they once used to be, right? The other part, and that's why I want to show sort of that close up part of the head of Jesus. I always find that part so interesting, that little glow that they make. For me, it's both fascinating and strange at the same time, that you have these painters that know to mix certain colors together, and it really makes it look like Jesus has this glowing crown over his head, right? This halo, however you want to call it. I mean, I call it a halo, but I mean, it could be a multitude of things, right? And it's really so interesting that with a little bit of paint mixed in together, that the painter was able to do that. And obviously, here, Jesus does not look too fantastic, right? But that's by intention. You're seeing him on his last few days, where at one point he will be, crying to the sky, God, why have you forsaken me, right? So this isn't, the color of Jesus is not meant to be glowing and wonderful and fantastic and oh, this is so happy. So to have this little bit of glow in contrast to the rest of him that's very somber, very dark, is poignant here. It's important to note that, and to realize that that's the whole point of Easter, right? To go through that, the last few days of Jesus, that realization that, okay, I'm not going to be on this earth anymore, but I'm willing to take that on because I know that death is not does not have the last word on our souls, um, on our life. It's not going to be the final statement, that there is more to that, right? And of course, that's if you're Catholic, that's the resurrection. That's the second coming of Christ. Of course, I don't want to get too much into religious debate here. Obviously, I realize that some of you might be Muslim or Jewish or another religion, etc. But for Christians, that's the how should I say this? That's the beauty of the religion, right? That it's you're not just here one day, gone the next, and bingo bango, it's done. And I hope you had a good time. I hope everything you wanted to do was done because, well, tough tits for you. You know, obviously that's their religious beliefs. If you shared, great, fantastic. I'm certainly not here to impose the Christian or Catholic faith on anybody. If you disagree, if you have different beliefs, you have that right to do so, right? Hopefully, you guys are taking my opinions as just that, my opinions, and taking these opportunities to have the discussion. So, by all means, guys, if you have a painting of a different religion that you want me to talk about, please let me know in the comments section. I'm all ears. I talk a lot about Christianity, Catholics, because that's the world I grew up in, right? Both my parents are Christians, but they did not baptize me, and they both made it very clear that it's supposed to be a choice of the person as an adult whether or not they want to become Christian or not. So I deeply appreciate that because it's allowed me to sort of question things and really decide for myself to come to that faith or not, and really make a conscious decision to be religious or not, right? Just like I hope everybody is given that opportunity, right? Although I do realize that some religions, you either are part of that religion or you're not, right? But anyways, these are, another video with me and my opinions on another painting. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this special video that I've decided. We're like, hey, wait a minute, it's Easter this weekend. I really should make a video. I did want to include a particular clip from the Vatican Easter presentation that they did last year, but for some reason Canva was just not having it. I tried and tried and several times to include the clip, and it would not have it. So, alas, maybe I'll include it in a shorter or different version or another video later on. But I'm hoping that you guys like this video. Leave me a comment, a like, an unlike, whatever you want to. Engagement is engagement. So, for all of you who are Christian, I hope this Easter weekend is a good weekend for you guys, and that you are taking the moment to reflect on your faith and on the life and times of Jesus and what he means to you in particular or to your faith in general. So, have a great one, guys. See you in the YouTube streets.